My guest today is BAFTA-nominated and Oscar-shortlisted Afghan filmmaker Elham Ehsas, and he returns with There Will Come Soft Rains. Now, Elham, whose acclaimed short Yellow earned both a BAFTA nomination and an Academy Award shortlist, is known for illuminating unseen perspectives with emotional clarity and unflinching humanity. With There Will Come Soft Rains, I always get that word "be" in there for some weird reason, but he continues this bold path, casting a woman's defiance as a metaphor for resilience in a changing world. Now, developed in close collaboration with global narrative change organization Climate Spring, There Will Come Soft Rains challenges how climate stories are told on screen. Now, rather than relying on common tropes of dystopia and personal blame, spectacle, or data, the film embeds the crisis in a very intimate human story of grief, courage, and connection. It is one of the first films to explore climate change through the lens of Muslim faith and female defiance, voicing an urgent appeal to reimagine how we live and adapt to our changing world. Now, co-funded through Climate Spring and Film London's Hot House Shorts Competition 2023, the production was also one of the first to adopt the Green Rider Handshake Agreement, ensuring a low-carbon, sustainable shoot. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome award-winning filmmaker Elham Ehsas and his Oscar-qualified short, There Will Come Soft Rains, to the show. Welcome back, friend.
Thanks for having me, man. Good to see you again.
You too. Well, let's dive into this film because you bring a storyline that includes climate change, but you chose to do it from the point of view from a human perspective, not a
Mm.
political or a scientific one. Why?
Well, when we were approaching this idea and the fact that we were going to make a film about the climate and what's happening to the planet, I feel like with most of my films, I approach it through a back door where I'm not tackling the theme head on. I'd rather talk about something smaller that speaks of the theme. And in this case, the film is about a young Pakistani woman who is so haunted by rising sea levels that she decides to dig up her dad's grave because she thinks it'll be underwater soon anyway. And that's where our entry point into this human element of climate change comes in and how we can kind of make climate into an accessible and compelling narrative tool to talk about the planet and what's happening.
Well, you bring the elements of faith,
Hmm.
family, authority in this film, and then Mira becomes the lone wolf in her beliefs. Now, I've
Hmm.
never seen these elements used with the subject of climate change before. So, with this film, and like you said, you kind of pick the smaller door to walk through to tell a story.
Hmm.
But why
Hmm.
has the subject of climate change become so polarizing today?
Oh man, it's kind of an incredible situation we're in because you have almost the believers and the non-believers on something that is fact. The planet is changing. And I think one of our challenges with making this film was to make it not so much, a documentary or around facts and figures, but more around a compelling piece of narrative drama. And we were really lucky to be collaborating with organization like Climate Spring, who champion bold storytelling told in brave new ways. I mean, for decades, we've had our scientist brethren kind of showing us the numbers, showing us the graphs, telling us the data, screaming from the rooftops that, look, guys, everything is changing. And I think now it's time for them to pass the baton to the artists and the filmmakers and the poets and the writers and the musicians to take that raw data and distill it into drama because it's stories that make the world turn. It's good stories that change things. They start movements, they start nations, they start beliefs, and I think that's what this current climate, the climate catastrophe that we're in needs. It needs stories. It needs compelling human drama, which is what we've tried to do with this film.
Well, you show many different divides in this film. And
Mm.
I was trying to keep track of all of the divides. So there was the um is it the Iman when she went to
Imam,
the
yeah, the Imam.
the mosque, and he was he was the skeptical one as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Then the the police, they
Mm,
were the same way. So everybody she came in contact to, even her sister, they all kind of thought she was crazy
mm,
and like, why are you worrying about this? I mean, like
mm,
completely blowing her off.
mm.
Is that
Well,
what it
that's the
feels
thing.
like with climate change?
Yeah, and I guess with climate, there's a spectrum of people and a spectrum of beliefs, and I guess part of the story, part of the film is that our protagonist has to go through all the different walks of life and how she navigates bureaucracy, authority, religion, family, you know? And these are all things that add that texture to a story that is ultimately, yes, it's about this. Um, the theme of climate. Ultimately, it's about sisterhood. It's about mourning. It's about family, and it's about history. It's about our roots in the ground. Our dead in the ground. They're still our roots. They're still our past. They're still our history that we could lose. And this again goes into the logistical things that we don't think about when we think about rising sea levels. We don't think about how that changes us as human beings and the way we live and the human condition.
Well, yeah, and a lot of people don't, it's funny because sometimes I don't think kids today are being educated like they need to be educated, even in the simple things of science. And, when
Mm,
I was a kid, we knew that the moon was in charge of the tides. And
mm,
if you're having rising sea levels, the tides are going to change. The tides are going to move in farther than they normally would. I remember going as a kid going to Florida on vacation. We'd spend 2 weeks at the beach, and it had always amazed me at what time of day high tide was going to be. And then there was low
mm.
tide. So a lot of
Mm,
these things we take for granted, but they're happening and they change over the decades. But there was something in this film that I really loved. And the moment this film started, I noticed it. And then I
mm,
noticed it throughout the film. So uh, I don't know if you were paying homage to the famed director John Ford, but I think you pulled some John Ford elements of cinematography here, which is
mm,
here's the strange thing, Ilham, because normally when I'm watching a short film, the cinematography, you kind of get it either at the beginning or you start noticing it as the film moves along. You hit it right off the bat. So tell me
mm,
how your framing placement of
mm.
the characters plays into the story, because I noticed, I call it the John Ford Horizon situation. He goes, make it interesting. It's like that line in The Offer, make it
Yeah,
interesting. Don't put it in the
yeah.
middle, put it at the top or the bottom. You do that. So tell
Mm.
me why.
When I was writing this film with my co-writer Sam Perry, I had these images that were coming to me. The opening image of these women in black with the graveyard behind them and the sky above them. And throughout, I had these different images. And I'm like John Ford, who pays such incredible heed to his frames. There's another filmmaker in Poland called Paweł Pawlikowski, who is just an incredible filmmaker. He did Ida, he did Cold War, and I feel like cinema is such a visual medium, and a lot of the storytelling is told through the framing, as well as the character, and as well as the dialogue, and as well as the casting and the music and the production design and the sound design and the mix. But the visual is your first approach to film, and this film, I really wanted to play with that and experiment with that because I wanted to find my identity as a filmmaker, and I think I really found it in There Will Come Soft Rains because my frames, like it took me a long time to frame each setup, and much to the chagrin of my producers and my DOP. But I worked collaboratively with my DOP to kind of come up with these frames that are compelling in themselves and that speak of that divide that you so beautifully put. Especially like your relationship growing up with the planet. And thinking about the water and thinking about the tides, and that's kind of a starting point with this film is our relationship with the characters and the way they see the planet, but through the framing, as the audience. And that's kind of so. I'm really glad that you picked that up, and it's something that
I
we're really proud of.
It jumped out at me the moment the film started because when
Mm,
the pallbearers are coming by carrying the casket, you
mm,
have them set low in the frame. You
mm,
see you see the majority of the cemetery in the background, and then
yeah.
there's the sky. So you're alluding to us that there is a bigger element that's much
Mm,
larger than humanity. And that okay, if I just took that one scene and I was going to just say, okay, what does this one frame mean?
mm.
The universe is bigger than all of us. And if we don't take care of where we're at, death is intimate.
Amen.
Intimate.
And
Did I say that right?
yeah, well, yeah, but like it's so true because it's kind of, and Pavel Pavlikovsky famously does say with his framing, he says the bottom frame is for my characters and the top is for God, you know? And the top of my frame was for God and for the universe and for nature, I wanted to show that we are tiny, and it's so, you picked it up so well, like we are tiny specks of existence on this beautiful landscape of the universe and also on this planet, like the planet will survive without us. In fact, it will do better without us. And if we don't look after her, we'll be gone. The planet will still be here, but we'll be gone. And then the planet will heal. Mother Nature will heal. So it definitely, I did want to allude to Mother Nature and to the universe in my framing. So,
well,
yeah.
well, you have another scene, and it's where Myra is sitting at the police station. Now, this is after she
Mm,
was interrogated, after she was arrested, but she's
mm,
sitting at the police station, and you have her framed in the lower right. And I
mm,
paused that shot because I already watched the film all the way through. I went back and I paused that shot.
mm,
And I'm looking at the shot itself, and then I noticed on the bulletin board there was a mental health flyer.
mm.
Was this a sign that many today think people who believe in climate change are crazy?
You know, I,
Did I
I
read
always,
too much into that?
yeah, I have I have such an incredible production designer, Rana Fadavi, and we spoke a lot about each scene and how the production design informs that. But I think that probably was something that Rana Fadavi put in, and something that does that. And again, I feel like with the frame, when the frame lives for long enough, and you don't do too much cutting away and too much cutting to different scenes, you do have time to explore and you do have time to wander and look around, and like that added to your experience watching the film, and you got something new from it that I hadn't noticed. So it's kind of, the film now is talking back to you, and it's talking back to the audience, which is, I think, it means my job is done as a filmmaker, and I can let her speak for herself.
Well, you have another shot of Mira where she's right side of the frame,
Mm,
but you only have her filmed here.
mm,
What was that shot all about? Because I'm thinking, you could have filmed her full face, could have centered
mm,
her, or maybe off center, but you took half.
mm,
I thought it was a very interesting, cool shot because I love the
mm,
creativity. What was that all
mm.
about?
Well, it's interesting because that scene that you're speaking of is when she's watching the water drip from the water tank into the cup, and it's slowly overflowing, and she's watching it drip, drip, drip. And that's kind of one of the most, I felt, in the scene in the film. It's kind of an intimate moment of her and nature speaking to each other. And it's almost, I mean, throughout the whole film, she's so tortured, and she's so agonized by this thing, this pull that she has to save her dad. And I think at that point, it's almost like I always saw that as Mother Nature for the first time in the film, and the only time kind of watching, kind of looking eye to eye, you know,
Well,
and
yeah.
speaking without saying anything.
Well, yeah, because there were, and so what I did was I went back through the film
Mm,
and I'm like, okay, there are many visual elements of water in the film because
mm,
you have rain in the title. So I'm looking.
mm,
There's the river, there's the
mm,
rain, there's the water
mm.
cooler, even the glass in the
Mm.
red door has a water effect to it.
Yeah.
Because I look at everything because I'm like, everything's
You,
going to mean something if the
Yeah.
filmmaker did it right. Some are subtle, some are
Mm.
not. So,
Mm.
what was the message you wanted to deliver to the audience by using the references to water?
Well, I've said this before when I had an interview with you last year with Yellow. You are probably one of the most impressive watchers of cinema. You know what I mean? The things you pick up on, it's incredible. And yeah, it's very astute. You are right, because even when they're speaking to the imam, there's a water bottle on the left of frame.
I saw
Um,
that. I saw that
yeah,
water bottle.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's kind of like, well, Water is a character in the film throughout as well. Whether it's via sound design, we had a lot of that in the sound design, in the sound mix, or whether it's visual in the frame, or whether it's cut off, or whether it's talking back to her, or kind of watching her in silence. And it's all of these little textures that you build on after you finish writing the film, and you bring your collaborators together, and you bring your HODs together. And that's what I feel the best thing about making a film is bringing all of these multi-talented people who are better than you in everything that they do, and you go, right, how do we bring everything that we know about the subtleties of cinema, the subtleties of art, of production design, of sound design, of Foley, of camera, and how do we give birth to this thing that will speak back? This film, this damn thing that we call a film that we work so hard to make.
Well, see, that's the thing. I want young filmmakers, especially, and ladies and gentlemen, if you've never seen Yellow, you need to see Yellow, and you need to see this film as a teaching tool on how to layer your storylines, not just with dialogue, but even with camera movement, the music score, and subtle nuances that need to be there. Now, I'm going to go ahead and ask this question because I was going to save
Mm,
it. Um, so I'm watching the film, and then I noticed the ratio.
mm.
Did you use a 1-to-1, a 3-to-2, or a 4-to-3 ratio on this film?
It was 4-3.
Okay, I had a
It
feeling it
was
was
4-3.
4-3. I had
Yeah.
one interview where he did a 1-to-1,
Oh, that's
and
brave. One. Yeah.
oh yeah, but it's so close. And
Yeah. Yeah.
was the 4-3 a reason to make us feel small, or that we need to start taking notice because the
Mm.
world is closing in on us?
Well, that was it. I think the word that I was looking for with my cinematographer was suffocation. It was our protagonist being suffocated by this desire and by this helplessness, which leads her to do what she does in the end. Which I always had this idea of this rock and roll ending. I once famously, someone said that a feature film is a win by points, but a short film is a win by knockout. And I'm always looking for that knockout, and I'm always looking for that rock and roll ending, and I think all of that informed the visual language, which was 4-3 that we landed on
Well, the
in
thing
three.
is when I saw the ratio, I
Mm,
went back and I kept thinking, I'm like, okay, because when you watch Yellow,
mm,
the her world is closing in on her because you filmed it in this very small tight space in this shop, so
mm,
we feel the closeness, the closing in beneath the veil. In this
mm,
case, you literally took the world, you took the universe, and you
mm,
brought it into, like you said, this suffocating 4-3 ratio to
mm.
kind of give us to help to give us the visual that we may be small, but there's a big problem.
Absolutely. And I think, again, it goes into the way I chose to end the film, which was on hope and which was on action, and movement, and kind of going, yes, we're small, and yes, there's a big problem, but we are problem solvers. We have problem solved throughout our survival, throughout our existence. And again, working with an organization like Climate Spring, who are such champions of hopeful storytelling rather than the doom and gloom of modern climate storytelling, it gave us an in into, hey, look, we can't end on on a down. We have to end on action. We have to end on something, and there is action. I don't want to ruin
No,
the
I
ending,
don't
but
want to give away the ending,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but
But
I loved it.
oh, thanks, man.
I loved it because it sets because prior to the ending, and we're not going to bring it up, ladies and gentlemen. When you see this film, you're going to understand it. And but I loved it because it left me with a smile on my face. But
Good.
when Mira and her sister Fatima were talking at the table, when Mira came over to see
Mm,
Fatima,
mm,
um, Fatima said that she had become a ghost after their father died,
mm,
but and then said that she was selfish.
mm,
And I was watching. I looked at that scene over and over again. I'm thinking, okay, she said that Mira was selfish. I kind of agree with Fatima.
mm,
And I was wondering, because of the way that she had said it,
mm.
are people becoming less interested in climate change because we have so many other social issues clouding the air now?
Mm. Yeah, I would say unfortunately it's kind of something that is beyond our control almost. Like if you look at the way we live, the modern life is full of hypocrisies, you know? The way we have to work, the way we have to communicate, it all relies on the heavy exploitation of the planet, you know? The phones that we carry, the cobalt that's being mined, the lithium, that the having to travel for work, and the cheapest way is by air. You know what I mean? It's all like we're almost um, kind of uh, wrestled into this position where we're kind of like we're stuck between a rock and a hard place, and I think that's a lot of the problems of modern existence, which we kind of tried to touch on a little bit, but it's something that I've been thinking about as a filmmaker, especially now as a filmmaker who's made a film about climate. And I learned while I was making this film, in pre-production, we decided that we're gonna walk the walk. We're gonna have vegan catering. We're gonna spend longer in pre-production to try and find locations closer to each other and do smart location planning, so we don't use public transport or vehicles to go between different. So we can just walk, And where we have to move around, we take public transport. Even in post-production, I was minimizing my own travel to and from the suite, the editing suite. So it's all of these things that I learned while making this film. And as a result, I've been thinking about my place on the planet and my contribution, or lack of, and what that means, as what my existence as a filmmaker means, especially when it comes to traveling for film festivals or trying to champion a film or trying to, through my work, traveling for recce's or whatever. So I'm kind of becoming conscious of the hypocrisy that we live in, and that's completely out of our hands. It's kind of tragic, I'd say.
Well, yeah, one of the areas in which we fail in
Mm,
society is in the areas of recycling. And people think, "Oh, I
mm,
recycle all the time." I'm like, "No." On a personal level, that's great. We may have, here we have two trash cans. There's the regular trash and then there's the recycled trash.
mm,
But corporations should be placed in the position that they should be responsible for the
mm,
waste of the products they produce. Once the
mm.
consumer buys them, the corporation should still be responsible for where that product is going to end up
End
at.
cycle. Yeah, yeah. It's the life cycle of that product. And I think, look, we can all do our bits, but I think a lot of like um, there's a greater impact because of these corporations and their actions. And I feel like there needs to be a lot of more accountability when it comes to the climate narrative, and who we look at and who we hold responsible and who actually has the power to make the most significant change. And I think, of course, that's corporations, and that's the way they practice and the way that they do business that I think needs to be evaluated as well.
Yeah, I remember it's probably been a decade ago. I think it was Germany that had adopted a program that major corporations had to take care of wherever their goods were. And then we're talking,
Mm,
it could be automotive, it could be washer, dryer, refrigerator. If those
mm,
things are discarded, they're going to be responsible for picking that stuff up and then
mm,
recycling. And I think the recycle percentage was up towards to 80% of the product had to be recycled.
mm.
Of course, that's just one country on a massive planet. But I want to ask you about something that I completely loved in this film. That's your color palette. It's a muted color palette.
Mm,
It gave your film its own signature look.
mm.
And out of the hundreds that I've seen this year, it really stood out because it was so different that I was looking at it so closely, Ilham, that I almost thought that you filmed on Kodak or something.
I wish I can't afford Kodak. But man, look, again, it comes back down to what builds a frame, you know? And the frame is built by the hard work of my production designer, my cinematographer, my costume designer, my hair and makeup, my actors. Um, and also with the mindset that, you know, the earth is a character within this film, and how can we kind of portray that? And we tried to do that with our color schemes and the costumes we were using and the differences and the way the costume changes as the film goes on, getting more and more warm, you know. But it was just such good fun making this film and kind of flexing all the different cinematic muscles and learning and making mistakes along the way. I think it's yeah, it's been my biggest learning curve, and I'm very grateful to have made it. You know.
Yeah, it was, I'm not going to give the ending away, but I did find it a little humorous when Mira brought the shovel. Here's this shiny, polished, brand new shovel. And it was so funny because the two people that were standing there at the graveside on the row behind her, Mira was just like,
Yeah, you guys are done. Yeah, it's like
yeah.
you guys gonna go now.
And I'm like, girl, you're standing there with a shovel. They know you're not about to plant flowers. and and she waited for them to leave, but it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
too late.
It was too late. But again, it's that just that image of this, because I feel like the worst place you could take a shovel to is a graveyard, right? That's one of the laws of life. Like, the, don't take a shovel to a graveyard. You know what I mean?
Well,
And
well,
I thought
yeah.
that's a funny, funny image.
Well, and I love the upward camera shot from the grave looking up at
Yeah,
her. I
yeah,
love that
yeah.
shot. And so how did you come to cast the film?
Oh, Lord, have I got a story for you? We
I'm
actually we found our lead the night before we shot. We had someone else, another incredibly talented actor, but she, because of changed plans, she wasn't going to make it on set the next morning, and it was a complete, like, we had about 12 hours to try and find a replacement, and Olivia de Lima, in her grace and incredible talent, like, she agreed to step into the role with 12 hours notice, and she showed up the next day on time, ready, off book. And we were so incredibly, lucky to have her. And again, it's kind of these accidents that happen along the way that make the film. We had this one idea and this one look and thought, oh, this person, but then things go wrong because it's filmmaking. It's combustion, it's things blowing up in your face, and you're going, oh shit, how do I fix that? And then you're kind of like wiping blood and kind of going, oh my God, you know what I mean? But then you find film, like our ending, we had a different ending, because it was the same ending, but it was shot in a different way. But we had to reshoot because of our lighting setup and the green screen, and we found a better ending in the reshoot. Because it's all like it's the film that kept, after a while, the film kept pushing back and showing us the way it wanted to be made. So, like I said, like, this film was a complete adventure. Like, at every point, things were going wrong. Do you know what I mean? At every point. uh, things were going wrong, but then eventually they were going right. And it had to go wrong for it to go right, which is what I've learned as a filmmaker. Like, there's nothing like filmmaking. For anyone watching who is thinking about making films, they'll know that filmmaking is this grand adventure where it's all about how to fix up all the messes you make and how that adds, and that's the texture of cinema, and that's what the film was always meant to be. And it took you having to mess up to find the damn thing. Know?
Well, how did she learn? Okay, I know actors are extremely talented, but she had to
Yeah,
learn those lines.
she's amazing. That's why she's just incredibly amazing. I had a Zoom with her like literally 10 p.m. the night before shoot. We were going to be on set at like 6 a.m. And I said, look, like, this is the deal. And she was like, look, don't worry, leave it with me, And I left it with her, and she danced with it. She was
Well,
incredible,
I thought she
incredible,
was perfect for the role because
incredible.
because what I loved about it was she was extremely relatable.
Mm,
She
mm,
had this she had this nice, soft look and demeanor.
mm,
So she was very approachable for the audience.
mm,
Vulnerable. We could feel her grief, her concern, her frustration of not being taken seriously by a lot of people.
mm.
Um, so I thought she was absolutely fantastic, but it was so funny because with the ending, and all I'm going to say is she made somebody a believer.
Oh, amen. You and me both.
And
You and me both, brother.
I see it. I see the ending in my head right now, and I literally want to laugh and smile every time I see it because it's just it. I did not expect it,
Good.
but it
Well
was
done.
perfectly done.
I'm so glad. And again, kudos to the actors and the cast and the people that we had on this film, that they all just worked together to bring this ending. And also the music. I used an incredible soundtrack by Rusha Ranjan and his partner. Um, and it's Qawwali music. It's old Urdu music, which is kind of it's rooted in Sufi mysticism, and that's the music that sees us into that last scene when it pinnacles out into the last moment. And again, it's kind of again, it's the music and it's the picture and it's the craft and it's the acting and it's all coming together in this cacophony of cinema.
Well, yeah, because I was going to ask you about the music score because I noticed that music score, but I want to ask you about this one shot. There was just something so surreal to it. Is when she was standing in the river, and then
Mm,
you do the camera shot of her hand
mm,
going into the water, and I just looked at that. I'm like, it's so artistic.
mm,
But it was also, I think, profound in its storytelling.
mm. Well, I always say this as a director, and I don't know if a lot of directors can relate, but I definitely I think one of the biggest things that I need to learn more about is how to speak to composers and how to speak the language of music, because it's really hard. I can look at a frame and I can look at a costume and I can tell what I like and what I don't like. I can look at the lens and I can look at the production design, and I can be in the sound mix and go, that's too low or that's too high. But when it comes to creating music, this texture, I think it's so hard. And I think there's a whole language that you have to learn and a whole barrier. But I think working with my composer, Holly, and then later on with Russia on that song, um, when it's right, it's right. When the scene speaks, the music is there to sing with it. And I think a lot of the time I was led by my musical collaborators to find the moments. So I was learning throughout, man. I was learning throughout. But that's one thing that I always say. Like I feel like I need to work on learning how to speak with composers when it comes to music, because it's a whole universe. It's a
Oh,
whole
oh,
universe of.
I we
Um,
so we're getting ready to shoot this short film because I'm an
mm,
EP on it, and
nice.
And what was funny, what was the funniest part was that when we announced that we were doing this film,
Mm.
in one day, I had 6 music composers reach out who wanted to work on it.
Wow, amazing. Yeah,
And but you're
they're
right,
everywhere.
the thing about music composers is with the film, you're handing your baby over to them
Yeah.
and you don't know what to expect.
You have no idea. There's no reference. There's no reference point of, and that's the scariest thing. Like that's the only point in making a film, I think, where you're in limbo. You're in no man's land. You're floating. You're like, I actually don't. Whatever comes my way, I'll grab onto it, but I don't know what's coming. I'm just gonna keep floating in this ether. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, and it's and then but at the same time, when you're sitting there and then you hear the music score for the first time, then it's like someone breathed life into your film.
click. Yeah, that's when you know when you're like, boop, there we go. That's nice. So yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I
like
feel it,
now
man.
this project is serious.
Yeah, now we're talking. I mean, now we're grown ups. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Now,
exactly.
now it's a film.
That's exactly it. Now,
I have a
how
score.
yeah, yeah. And so I've got this whole list of music composers that have done such incredible high-end work, and it's just so crazy. I'm like, I could literally just like handpick, a whole crew now. But how did you work in collaboration, or how did the collaboration happen with Climate Spring?
So, Climate Spring are an incredible organization, and they had a competition. They were inviting filmmakers to approach them with a story, with a film about climate change that's not about climate change. And here again comes the innovative, approach to climate. So they were championing storytelling that was left field, storytelling that didn't rely on the tropes and the cliches. And we said, okay, well, we have this film about someone digging up their loved one because of rising sea levels, and immediately, like they were in, and they were incredible collaborators, um, incredible notes at every point. They were elevating the film, and where needed, they were staying out of the way. Do you know what I mean? There's such a fine balance of coming in with the notes, but also getting out of the way of the machine that's about to go, the train. Do you know what I mean? And I think they perfected the balance, and it was just an incredible joy to work with them. You know, and I learned a lot because they were guiding me on the actual practices of how to make a film efficient. They provided us with green generators, with a handbook of how to shoot something, how to make it more efficient. There's BAFTA Albert, which is another great resource for efficient filmmaking. Um, and all of this just kind of, again, it's all about collaboration, man. It's all about good collaboration. And I was very lucky that it was every department, whether it was funding, whether it was executive producers, camera, costume, cast, my collaborators were there we were lifting the film up together, you know?
I love that. I absolutely love that because we can learn so much in the areas of collaboration. The biggest thing I love though is that they trusted you enough to keep their hands off of it.
And I'm forever grateful for that, that's a great compliment from them. And I hope I delivered.
See, I would be standing there going, he did yellow. Leave him alone.
They were amazing. Climate Spring were
Well,
amazing.
what
Yeah.
what's been the audience's reaction worldwide to this film?
They've loved it. I think it's always scary when you give a film out into the world and kind of it's not yours anymore. It doesn't belong to you anymore. And I think I've been in a few screenings watching audiences watch the film, and it's always really scary. But they've loved it and they've shown love to the film, and the film has spoken to them. So it's the best thing a filmmaker can ask for.
I love that. Now, I know that I've had the honor to interview you twice before about your incredible film Yellow. How
Me
did your
too.
life change after being Oscar shortlisted and also BAFTA nominated?
I think that was an incredible I was an incredible opportunity because then I got to work with people like Climate Spring and my current producers and my cast on this film. And I think what these awards and festivals, although they aren't it doesn't mean that much, but it's still a stepping stone towards making better and more compelling art and cinema. And I think the BAFTA nomination and the Academy shortlisting has really helped me to reach out to new and exciting collaborators and kind of go, hey, look, we can make something, you know, and also has given me a little bit of a seal of quality to go, well, you know, I have this thing that was nominated, so and that trust that comes about, which in turn allows me to make films and learn from films and work with people who I can learn from. I think that's all been all encompassing. So I've been very lucky.
Well, were the two campaigns for Yellow with the Oscars and BAFTA, was it nerve-wracking?
Oh, absolutely. It was a hell of a ride. I'll say that it was a hell of a ride. I enjoyed it so much, but I think it's really scary at points. Very
I'm
busy, but
Yeah, because now you're Oscar qualified again, so you're ready for hopefully for another big ride.
fingers crossed. We'll see what the universe says. You know, if it's meant, it's meant. You know, I'm a big believer of everything in its time, and you know we'll take it in our stride, whatever happens.
Yeah, it's so, I know that I saw you in a couple of episodes of The Agency. Do you have anything new coming up?
There's another film by the incredibly talented director called David Mackenzie, who did Hell or High Water, and he's got a film out called Fuse with Theo James and Aaron Taylor Johnson that I'll be in as well. So I'm really excited for that. I think they had the premiere at Toronto this year. I'm not sure when it's coming out for theatrical release, but that was good fun.
Oh man, it is not only are you a fantastic director, I enjoyed even seeing you on screen because you're so multi-talented. But ladies and gentlemen, There Will Come Soft Rains challenges how climate stories are told on screen. Now, rather than again relying on those common tropes that we've talked about, like dystopia and personal blame, data, the film embeds the crisis in an intimate human story of grief, courage, and connection. It is one of the first films, again, to explore climate change through the lens of Muslim faith and female defiance, voicing an urgent appeal to reimagine how we live and adapting to our changing world. Now, this is a film where a woman is haunted by the threat of rising sea levels who digs up her father's grave to move him to higher ground. But that single act sets faith, family, and climate crisis on a collision course, forcing her to face tradition, authority, and her longing for sisterhood. Now, the moment this film started, I noticed the framing. I noticed the cinematography, which instantly was telling me that this is a multi-layered story. Now, Elham is a master filmmaker and he brings his mastery back to the silver screen with There Will Come Soft Rains. Now, think of the famed directors like John Ford, Quentin Tarantino, and you understand that Elham's talent sits at the top of the world in storytelling and seeing something profound through the camera lens. Now, I've watched the journey of this film all year, and it is being talked about even more so than his award winning film Yellow, which is still one of my favorite short films ever. I say that honestly, Elham. And
Thank you, sir.
climate change, it's a polarizing topic, and there are millions who stand on the opposite sides of this issue. But he makes the topic more human than anyone I've ever seen cover this topic before on film. It's all about humanity, and he puts a human face to it, but he gives it tremendous heart. Elham, it's always not just an honor to speak with you, it is an absolute blast to speak to you, and much success to you on on the next Oscar journey.
Dude, the pleasure is all mine. Thanks for having me again, man. And it's really good fun, always.
Yeah, always, brother, always. And again, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to have to check this film out. And for all of you up and coming young filmmakers, you've got to check out Yellow. you've got to check out this brand new film, There Will Come Soft Rains, because you can learn by watching short films and learn how to truly tell a story. And like Elham said earlier, take the small elements as you walk through the door because
Mm.
no one's going to expect them, but it also places you in a whole different area when it comes to filmmaking where people will take notice. So don't give up on your dreams because filmmaking is the greatest genre in the world. So, ladies and
Amen.
gentlemen, you can catch all of the Bond on Cinema interviews at bondoncinema.com. Check out our Prime show, our YouTube channel, and you can listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, and Audible and more. And remember, you're either going to see me at the movies or from the red carpet.